My name is Clara Hensley. I'm 26 years old, and this story happened in 2022 in Bristol, England. For years, I lived in the shadow of my perfect sister and the wealthy family who made me feel like a charity case. But on the night of her engagement party, when a helicopter descended from the sky and the man they mocked as fake stepped out wearing my ring, every single person who ever humiliated me went silent. That was the night my truth landed louder than their laughter. Would you forgive a family who spent years making you feel invisible, or would you let success do the talking? I grew up believing love had to be earned. My parents adopted me when I was 8 after losing their first child in an accident. From the outside, they looked noble, the Hensleys, an old-money British family known for their kindness. But behind those smiles was comparison, constant and cruel. They loved showing me off. This is Clara, our adopted daughter. She's very artistic. The way they said adopted always carried a shadow, a reminder that I didn't belong by blood. And my sister Isabel was the golden one. Same age as me, but born into their world, blonde, graceful, effortlessly perfect. While she studied finance and wore pearls, I painted murals in small cafes and worked part-time as a gallery assistant. Every family dinner was a performance where Isabel sparkled and I faded. Then came the invitation. Isabel and Henry's engagement party, Saturday, June 18th, the Rosemont estate. The handwriting was my mother's, elegant and cold. At the bottom, a note, formal attire only. I almost didn't go, but something inside me whispered that it was time to stop hiding. Maybe part of me wanted to show them that I'd built something of my own, that I wasn't the quiet failure they remembered. That something, or rather someone, was Ethan Cole. I met him in the simplest way. I was painting a commissioned mural in a downtown cafe when a man stopped behind me and said, "You see stories in colors most people don't even notice." I turned, and there he was, tall, calm, wearing a gray coat and a quiet kind of confidence. We talked. He told me he ran a design consultancy, though he never said how big it really was. What struck me most was how he listened, not out of politeness, but like he truly wanted to understand. Over the next few months, he became the first person who made me feel seen. He'd drop by with coffee, ask about my work, even help wash paint brushes. No one had ever done that for me before. When I told him about the engagement party and how my family treated me, he didn't pity me. He just smiled and said, "Then let's give them something they'll never forget." I laughed. "What do you mean?" "You'll see," he said. "But promise me one thing, don't downplay yourself that night." The evening arrived. The Rosemont estate looked like a movie scene, string lights, marble fountains, and champagne glasses reflecting soft golden light. I stood near the gate, adjusting my simple navy blue dress. My heart was hammering. As I walked in, conversations quieted for a moment, that familiar judgmental silence. Isabel spotted me from across the room. She approached with her polished smile. "Clara, you actually came," she said in that tone that sounded like kindness but wasn't. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied softly. She leaned closer. "I didn't know you'd have time between art projects." The guests nearby chuckled. I smiled anyway. "Oh, you'd be surprised what I have time for." My mother arrived next, glass of wine in hand. "Sweetheart, you look lovely. Did you come alone again?" I breathed in. "No," I said. "He's just running late." "Oh, she said with a smirk. "The mysterious boyfriend who doesn't exist." Isabel laughed. "Maybe he got lost. Imagination can be hard to find directions for." Their laughter echoed like glass breaking inside me, but I stayed still. As speeches began, Isabel took the microphone, radiant in her diamond gown. "Before we toast, I just want to thank my family, my real family, for always being there." Everyone clapped. My mother looked directly at me. "Some people are just born to belong," she said quietly. And then a sound sliced through the music. A deep, rhythmic thudding. Guests looked around. "Is that a helicopter?" someone murmured. Outside the glass wall, lights appeared in the sky. Strong, white beams cutting through the evening haze. The thudding grew louder. Isabel frowned. What on earth? The sound stopped as the helicopter landed gently on the lawn. Gasps spread through the crowd. The doors opened, and out stepped Ethan, wearing a black suit, wind in his hair, a calm smile on his face. The room froze. Every camera turned. My sister's fiancé actually whispered, "Is he famous?" Ethan walked straight toward me. No hesitation, no nerves, just grace. He stopped right in front of Isabel, gave a small nod, then turned to me. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Had to land somewhere." I couldn't help smiling. You flew here." He took my hand, eyes locked on mine. "Wouldn't miss this for the world." The silence in that hall was electric. My mother's face drained of color. Isabel blinked rapidly, her champagne trembling in her hand. "Everyone," Ethan said with a soft smile, "I'm Ethan Cole, Clara's fiancé." You could hear 100 gasps. Someone whispered, "Cole Industries." Another voice, "He owns half of Skybridge Group." Ethan didn't confirm or deny it. He just smiled and said, "I'm just here for Clara." That one line, "I'm just here for Clara," cut through the room like light. My family scrambled to act polite. My mother stammered, "Of course, darling, please sit." Isabel forced a laugh. "We didn't realize Clara had such connections." Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. "They don't realize a lot of things," he whispered. Dinner went on in awkward tension. Isabel's laughter sounded thinner now. She kept trying to impress Ethan, asking about his work, pretending to care about my art. But Ethan wasn't performing for them. He was quietly, deliberately making sure I was seen. He pulled my chair closer, brushed a crumb off my plate, and looked at me the way people in movies look at their forever. When the dessert arrived, he raised his glass. "To truth," he said softly, but everyone heard it. "The kind that doesn't need permission to exist." Everyone froze for a moment, then mumbled a confused cheers. As the evening ended, Isabel approached me, mask of politeness cracking. "Clara, you could have told me who he was." I smiled. "You could have treated me like your sister." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Ethan offered me his hand. "Ready to go?" I nodded. We stepped outside into the soft night air. The helicopter waited, lights glimmering. The wind from the blades tugged at my hair. Ethan helped me climb in. As we lifted off, I looked down at the shrinking estate, at the people who once made me feel small. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel beneath them. I felt free. Ethan leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "You didn't need me to prove them wrong, Clara. You already did that yourself." I smiled through quiet tears. "Maybe, but it felt good having you there when they finally saw me." The helicopter rose higher. The estate lights faded into a golden blur. And for the first time, I felt weightless, not because I was in the air, but because I'd finally let go of needing their approval. When the next morning arrived, the whole house buzzed with excitement. My sister Ava's engagement party was just hours away, and the air felt thick with perfume, gossip, and expectations. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the soft blue dress I had picked for the evening, simple but elegant, nothing too loud, nothing too expensive. I could hear Mom downstairs giving orders to the decorators, her voice sharp and commanding, while Dad's occasional laughter blended into the background like a man who had already accepted that this day was not about him. I looked at my reflection and whispered, "You'll be fine, Clara," but deep inside I wasn't sure. Ava had always been the golden child, flawless hair, perfect smile, and the kind of confidence that made people forget anyone else was in the room. She didn't earn attention, it just fell into her lap. And tonight, she would officially become Ava Sinclair, fiancé to Ethan Blake, a man whose name alone opened doors. A man I once secretly had feelings for before he met my sister. I shook off the thought. That part of me was buried a long time ago. The evening sky turned amber as the guests began arriving. Cars lined the driveway like jewels in the twilight, and laughter floated through the air. I stepped into the main hall, my heels clicking softly against the marble. The chandeliers above shimmered, scattering golden light across the faces of people who all looked like they belonged, except me. When I found my seat at the corner table, my sister spotted me. Her lips curved into a sharp smile. "Clara, there you are. I was wondering if you'd actually show up on time." Her friends laughed. I forced a smile. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Mom approached and adjusted my necklace, not out of affection, but as if fixing a mistake. "Try not to speak too much tonight, dear. We don't want anyone thinking you're the center of attention." Her words stung, but I nodded silently. I was used to it. The party unfolded like a dream I wasn't part of. Toasts were made, laughter echoed, and every eye followed Ava as she glowed in her ivory gown. I sipped my drink quietly until she stood to make an announcement. "Everyone," Ava said, tapping her glass, "I have one more surprise for tonight." All heads turned toward her. My heart sank. I knew that tone, that sweet, dangerous tone she used before tearing me apart in front of others. "This," she continued, holding up her engagement ring, "is just the beginning of perfection. But I must admit something. My dear sister Clara here also claims to be engaged. Isn't that right?" Murmurs rippled through the guests. My throat tightened. "Yes," I replied, forcing a calm smile. "His name is Adrian." Ava laughed loud and cruel. "Adrian? Oh, come on. Clara, we've never seen him. You didn't even bring him tonight. Does he even exist, or did you just make him up to feel special?" The crowd laughed. Even Ethan, her fiancé, looked awkwardly amused. My parents said nothing, not even Dad. I stood frozen, trying to hold back tears. "He couldn't make it tonight," I whispered. Ava tilted her head. "Of course he couldn't, because he's imaginary." The laughter stung like acid. I turned away, pretending to smile, but my hands trembled around my glass. Inside, I wanted to disappear. That's when I heard the distant hum, a deep, rhythmic vibration that grew louder every second. The laughter faded as people glanced toward the windows. The sound was coming from above. "What's that noise?" someone asked. And then silence. A beam of wind swept through as the doors opened, and every head turned. Outside, descending gracefully from the night sky, was a black helicopter. The propellers slowed as it landed just beyond the garden lights, kicking up a swirl of golden dust. Guests gasped, cameras rose, and whispers filled the hall. From the helicopter stepped a tall man in a charcoal suit, the city lights gleaming on his silver watch. His presence was magnetic, calm, confident, and utterly composed. He removed his sunglasses, scanning the crowd, and then his eyes found mine. "Adrian." He walked toward me with purpose, every step echoing like thunder in the silence. The crowd parted without a word. When he finally reached me, he smiled softly, then kissed my hand. "Apologies for being late, love. I had to wrap up a meeting in London." Ava's face went pale. The guests fell silent. Even my mother looked speechless for the first time. Adrian turned to the crowd. "Good evening, I'm Adrian Cole, Clara's fiancé." You could feel the shock ripple through the room. Ethan blinked. Someone dropped a fork. Ava stammered, You came in a helicopter." Adrian's lips twitched. It was the quickest way to make it on time. He turned to me again, his eyes warm. "You look stunning tonight." For a moment, I forgot the humiliation, the laughter, the years of being overlooked. Everything melted away under the quiet strength in his voice. Ava, recovering her composure, forced a laugh. "Well, that's impressive. I didn't realize Clara's fiancé was so accomplished." Adrian smiled politely. "Accomplished isn't the right word. Grateful, maybe. Grateful to have someone who believed in me before I had anything worth showing." The room went quiet again. He looked at my family. "Clara told me how proud she is to come from such a strong, supportive family. I see now what she meant." There was a faint sting in his tone, gentle, but cutting enough for everyone to feel it. Ava tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "Of course, we're thrilled to meet you, Adrian." Mom nodded stiffly. "Yes, of course." Adrian offered a small bow. "Likewise. Now, if you'll excuse us, I'd like to steal my fiancé for a few moments." He guided me outside, where the cool night air felt like freedom. The helicopter lights glowed softly behind us. "Are you okay?" he asked, brushing a tear from my cheek. I nodded, trembling. "I didn't expect you to come." He smiled faintly. "Clara, you deserve to be seen by everyone who ever made you feel small." And in that moment, surrounded by the echo of laughter that had turned into silence, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, dignity doesn't come from fighting back. It comes from letting your truth speak louder than their judgment. As the helicopter blades began to spin again, I looked up at the sky and whispered to myself, "They'll never forget this night." And neither would I. The night after the engagement party, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, flashes of what had happened replayed in my mind. Ava's shock, Mom's silence, the guests whispering, and Adrian's calm voice cutting through it all. It wasn't just a moment of redemption. It felt like life had turned its balance back toward me for the first time in years. When morning came, the house was unusually quiet. No laughter, no chatter, just tension. I went downstairs, still wearing yesterday's exhaustion, and found Mom at the dining table scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up. "Morning," I said softly. Her eyes flicked toward me. "You embarrassed your sister last night, Clara." I froze. I embarrassed her. Mom sighed. "You didn't have to bring him in like that, in a helicopter, for heaven's sake. It made Ava look small on her own engagement night." My lips parted, but no words came out. For years, I had endured their coldness, their subtle rejection, and still somehow, they managed to twist this moment into guilt. "Mom," I whispered, "I didn't even know he was coming like that." "Then you should have told him not to," she replied sharply, standing up. "Ava cried all night. Your father's furious. You've made the family look dramatic." I wanted to scream. The family looked dramatic when they mocked me in front of everyone. But instead, I just said quietly, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Her jaw tightened. "You always find a way to play the victim, don't you, Clara?" I turned away before my tears could fall. There was no point explaining myself anymore. Outside, Adrian's car waited by the gate. He had texted earlier, "Breakfast. You could use a break from that house." When I slid into the passenger seat, he smiled softly. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep much," I admitted. He nodded, driving through the misty morning streets toward a small cafe by the river. The scent of coffee and baked bread filled the air as we sat down. For a moment, it felt normal, like we were just two people in love, not a woman trying to survive her family's cruelty. "You were incredible last night," he said gently. I shook my head. "I did nothing, you did everything." He smiled faintly. "Clara, you've spent years shrinking yourself just to make them comfortable. Last night wasn't about me, it was about you finally being seen." His words warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in years. After breakfast, he walked me along the riverside. The air was cold but peaceful. "There's something I didn't tell you," Adrian said after a pause. "I didn't just fly in for the party. I wanted to talk to you about something bigger." I frowned. "Bigger?" He took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position in New York. It's a huge step. I'd like you to come with me." I stopped walking. "New York?" He nodded. "I know it's sudden, but I can't imagine leaving you here, not with how they treat you. You deserve a fresh start." My heart raced. The idea of leaving, of truly starting over, felt like oxygen, but fear crept in too. "That's a big move," I said quietly. "What if I'm not ready?" He smiled. "Clara, you've been ready your whole life. You just didn't have anyone reminding you." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Ava. I hesitated, then answered. Her tone was icy. "I hope you're happy. You humiliated me in front of everyone." I closed my eyes. "Ava, I didn't plan any of it. Adrian just—" "Oh, stop pretending," she snapped. "You've always been jealous. Now you've turned my engagement party into your fairy tale." "I'm not competing with you," I said softly. "I never was." "Right," she sneered. "That's why your fake fiancé dropped from the sky like a movie hero." I bit my lip. "He's not fake, Ava, he's real, and maybe that's what scares you." There was silence on the line, then a sharp exhale. You'll regret this." She hung up. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling. Adrian gently took it from me. "Don't let her words stay in your heart. They don't belong there." But they did stay, like old scars that never fully healed. That evening, I returned home to pack a few things. I hadn't said yes to New York yet, but something inside me already knew I would. The house was silent when I walked in, but I could hear faint murmurs from the living room. My parents were sitting with a man I didn't recognize, sharp suit, briefcase, official tone. Mom's eyes flicked toward me. "Clara, we were just talking about you." The man stood and smiled thinly. "I'm Mr. Dalton, your sister's wedding planner. She's concerned about the recent public attention." I frowned. "What public attention?" He opened a tablet, showing a local news blog, photos of last night's engagement, the helicopter, and my name bolded in captions. "Mystery fiancé steals spotlight at Sinclair engagement." Mom's tone hardened. "You've turned a private family event into a spectacle. The Sinclairs are being talked about for all the wrong reasons." I blinked. I didn't ask anyone to post that. Dad finally spoke, his voice low but sharp. "We need this to go away. Ava's future in-laws are high profile. We can't have scandal." I stared at them, realizing they weren't worried about me, only their reputation. "You think I'm the scandal." Mom's lips pressed together. "You're leaving with him, aren't you? Maybe that's for the best." There it was, not a goodbye, a dismissal. I walked upstairs, my legs trembling. Each step felt heavier. In my room, I looked around the same walls that had watched me cry, hope, and survive. For a moment, I let the tears fall, not out of weakness, but out of release. Then I packed my suitcase. When Adrian arrived that night to pick me up, I stood at the doorway with my bag in hand. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. I nodded. "If I stay, I'll never be more than their shadow." He reached out his hand. "Then let's leave the shadows behind." As we drove away, I looked back through the rear window. The house grew smaller until it disappeared entirely. The next few days were a blur of airports, city lights, and new beginnings. New York was alive, chaotic, electric, and terrifying in the best way. Adrian's apartment overlooked the skyline, and for the first time in years, I felt something I had forgotten how to feel: belonging. One evening, as the city glowed beneath us, Adrian handed me a small box. My breath caught. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, perfect. "I know everyone already believes we're engaged," he said softly, "but I want this to be real if you'll have me." Tears welled in my eyes. "Adrian." He smiled. "You don't have to decide now. Just know you're no longer the girl who gets laughed at. You're the woman who walked away with her head high." I nodded, whispering, "I think I've been waiting my whole life to hear that." But life has a way of testing every new beginning. A week later, my phone buzzed again, Ava. This time, her voice wasn't angry. It was trembling. "Clara, something happened." My heart raced. "What is it?" "It's Dad," she said, her voice cracking. "He collapsed this morning. He's in the hospital." The room spun around me. Adrian touched my shoulder gently. "What's wrong?" "My father," I whispered. He's sick." And just like that, the distance I thought I had escaped suddenly felt unbearable. I booked the first flight back to London. Adrian insisted on coming with me, but I told him I needed to face this on my own, not as the girl they ridiculed, but as the daughter they forgot to love. When I entered the hospital room, the sight of Dad lying weakly on the bed broke something inside me. His eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in years, they softened when they saw me. "Clara," he whispered. I took his hand. "I'm here, Dad." He squeezed my fingers gently. "I'm sorry for everything. I should have stood up for you." Tears streamed down my face. "It's okay. You don't have to say it." But he did, because he knew, and I knew forgiveness was the only thing that could truly set me free. When I walked out of that room later, I realized something profound. Sometimes life takes everything away just to show you what truly matters. And as the night fell over the quiet hospital, I finally understood walking away wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of finding myself. The night of my sister's engagement was supposed to be perfect, a celebration filled with laughter, music, and love. But deep inside, I could feel something unsettling. The tension between me and my family had reached its peak. They still believed my fiancé, Ethan, was some struggling artist pretending to be rich. And despite all his kindness and humility, their whispers and judgmental stares never stopped. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my emerald green dress, my best friend Lily walked in. "Are you ready, Arya?" she asked, smiling softly. I nodded, though my heart was racing. As ready as I'll ever be. The engagement venue was a luxurious rooftop, overlooking the glowing skyline of the city. Fairy lights hung from every corner, and soft jazz music filled the air. My sister, Harper, looked radiant in her silver gown, the center of everyone's attention. She saw me entering and whispered something to our cousin Ava, both of them chuckling behind their hands. I pretended not to notice, though the sting was real. Ethan wasn't there yet. He had promised to arrive on time, but I knew he was planning something. He'd been mysterious for days, always on calls, whispering about final details. As I walked toward the bar to grab a drink, my mother approached me. "Arya, darling," she said with a tight smile, "please try not to embarrass us tonight." I frowned. "Embarrass you? What do you mean?" She sighed, lowering her voice. "Ethan, he's not exactly what this family considers suitable. Everyone, been talking. Harper's engagement is not the night for surprises." I forced a polite smile. "Don't worry, Mom. I wouldn't dream of stealing Harper's spotlight." But the bitterness in her tone lingered in my chest. The evening went on. Guests congratulated Harper and her fiancé, Daniel, who was charming and wealthy, the perfect man in everyone's eyes. My family adored him. They kept bragging about his father's company, the mansion they lived in, and their influence. Every time Daniel laughed, my father joined him as though they were old friends. I stood at the edge of the room, watching quietly. Lily nudged me. "Don't take it personally, Arya. They just don't know Ethan like you do." I smiled weakly. "Yeah, maybe tonight will change that." Then Harper's voice cut through the chatter. "Everyone," she announced, clinking her glass. "Before dinner, I'd like to thank all of you for being here, especially my amazing family." She smiled sweetly, then glanced at me. "And of course, my sister Arya, who brought her friend." People chuckled. My face burned. Harper continued, pretending to be innocent. "I just hope your boyfriend won't feel too uncomfortable here among real success stories." The crowd laughed. My hands trembled around my glass, but I kept silent. Lily reached out, whispering, "Don't react. You'll give them what they want." Before I could reply, a loud sound filled the air, the deep whirring of helicopter blades. Everyone turned toward the open rooftop entrance. Wind whipped across the tables, glasses rattled, and decorations fluttered wildly. The helicopter hovered just above the building, lights glowing against the night sky. People gasped, shielding their faces from the gusts. Then, slowly, the aircraft landed on the helipad across the rooftop. From the cabin stepped Ethan, tall, composed, dressed in a sleek black tuxedo. His expression was calm, confident, and undeniably magnetic. The moment he appeared, silence fell across the entire gathering. My mother's jaw dropped. Harper froze mid-laugh. Daniel blinked in disbelief. Ethan walked straight toward me, ignoring the stunned stares. He smiled warmly. "Sorry I'm late, love. Had to make sure the gift arrived first." Everyone's eyes followed his every move. He kissed my hand gently, then turned to Harper and Daniel. "Congratulations," he said with genuine charm. "It's a wonderful evening. Arya's been telling me how much this means to your family." Harper stammered, "Why you came in a helicopter?" Ethan chuckled. "Oh, that. Just the quickest way to get here from the airfield. The traffic was terrible." Then a group of servers entered, carrying boxes wrapped in silver and white ribbons. Ethan gestured toward them. "A small token from me and Arya, custom-designed wristwatches for all the guests. Limited edition." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel's eyes widened. "Wait, are these from Langston and Vale?" Ethan nodded. "I own half the company. Harper's face turned pale. My mother could barely speak. "You own it," she whispered. Ethan smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am. We've been expanding internationally. I just returned from our office in Zurich this morning." The room buzzed with disbelief. The same people who mocked me earlier were now whispering praises, trying to get closer to him. Harper tried to regain control. "Well, that's impressive. We didn't know you were in business." Ethan's tone remained gentle but steady. "I prefer not to lead with money. People reveal their true colors when they think you have none." The words hit like a silent thunderbolt. My family's laughter died instantly. He turned to me and said softly, "Shall we sit, Arya?" I nodded, trying not to cry. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not as the outsider, but as someone worthy. Dinner continued, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. Harper tried to act normal, but her forced smile betrayed her unease. My parents couldn't stop glancing at Ethan with newfound admiration, the same man they dismissed as unworthy hours ago. As dessert was served, Ethan raised his glass. "To Harper and Daniel, may your future be filled with understanding, respect, and kindness." He looked around the table. "Because sometimes what we think we know about people is only half the truth." Everyone clinked their glasses awkwardly. No one dared to make another cruel joke. Later, as the night came to an end, Ethan and I stepped out onto the balcony. The city sparkled below. He wrapped his arm around me. "You okay?" he asked. I exhaled, the tension finally melting away. "Better than okay. You didn't have to do all that." He smiled. "I didn't do it to prove anything. I did it to remind them that respect isn't earned through wealth, it's earned through character." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "Still, thank you. You changed everything tonight." He kissed the top of my head. "No, Arya, you did. You stood there with grace even when they tried to break you." Inside, I could hear the faint sounds of people whispering, my mother telling guests how she always knew Ethan was special, Harper pretending to be proud of me. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time, I felt free from their judgment. The helicopter lights blinked in the distance, ready to take us away. Ethan squeezed my hand. "Come on, let's go home." As we walked toward the pad, I glanced back one last time at the family who once doubted me, now speechless in their own hypocrisy. The city breeze brushed against my face, carrying away years of pain and silence. That night wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about reclaiming my worth and realizing that real love doesn't need validation from anyone. And when we lifted off the rooftop, leaving behind the glittering chaos, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. For every insult, every rejection, every scar, they had led me here. To the man who chose me for who I was. To the moment where truth outshone pride. And to the beginning of a life I no longer needed to defend. The morning after the engagement party, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains of Ethan's penthouse. The city's skyline glowed golden beneath the early dawn, and I found myself standing by the window, coffee cup in hand, replaying every moment from last night. It still felt surreal, the helicopter, the stunned faces, the sudden silence after years of mockery. For the first time, I had watched my family see me not as the adopted girl, but as someone who didn't need their approval to shine. Ethan walked up behind me, placing a gentle kiss on my shoulder. "Still thinking about it?" I smiled faintly. "A little. I just can't believe it actually happened. The way they looked at you, the way they looked at me." He chuckled softly. "People change their tone quickly when the masks come off." I turned to face him, his blue-gray eyes calm as ever. "You handled everything so gracefully, Ethan. You didn't humiliate them, even when they deserved it." He smiled. "Because vengeance doesn't heal anything, Arya, but dignity, that changes everything." We had breakfast together in silence, both lost in thought. I knew my family would be talking about last night for weeks, maybe even years. But I didn't care anymore. For once, I felt light, free. As I sipped my coffee, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, sighed, and handed it to me. "Looks like your mother, trying to reach you." My heart sank. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello." "Arya," her voice was unusually soft. "Oh, thank goodness you picked up. I wanted to talk about last night." I could almost hear the guilt in her tone. "What about it, Mom?" She hesitated. "I realize we may have misjudged Ethan. We didn't know he was so accomplished." I frowned. "And if he was, would that have made me any less worthy of your respect?" Silence, then a quiet sigh. "You always take things too personally, dear. We just worry about your future." "No, Mom," I said firmly. "You worry about appearances." There was another pause. Then she said, "Your father wants to have dinner tonight to apologize properly. Will you come?" I hesitated. Ethan was watching me quietly. Finally, I said, "We'll think about it," and hung up. He raised an eyebrow. "Dinner invitation?" I nodded. "They want to make amends." He smiled knowingly. "You don't have to say yes, you know." "I know," I said softly, "but maybe I should, not for them, for myself." That evening, Ethan and I drove to my parents' house. It felt strange walking up the familiar driveway, the same one I used to run down as a child, barefoot and laughing. Now, it felt heavy with years of unspoken words. My mother opened the door, her smile too practiced. "Arya, Ethan, come in, please." The living room looked exactly the same, perfectly arranged, like a museum of memories that no longer felt like mine. My father stood by the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. "Ethan," he said, offering a handshake, "I owe you an apology. We were unfair." Ethan shook his hand calmly. "It takes strength to admit that, sir." My sister Harper appeared next, wearing casual clothes but still holding that faint air of superiority. "Arya," she said, forcing a smile, "last night was unforgettable." "Yeah," I said evenly, "I'm sure it was." Dinner was served, and for the first time the table felt quiet, too quiet. No snide remarks, no whispers, no laughter at my expense. It was almost unsettling. My mother cleared her throat. "Ethan, we didn't realize how successful you were. Harper told us you own several companies." Ethan nodded politely. "Yes, though I prefer not to discuss business during family dinners." My father laughed awkwardly. Of course, you're a private man, admirable." The conversation stumbled from one topic to another. Harper tried to steer it toward her upcoming honeymoon, but no one seemed as invested as before. I could feel the weight of their guilt, the realization that they had built walls between us for years, and now those walls were crumbling. After dinner, as we stood to leave, my father said softly, "Arya, I know we haven't always treated you the way you deserved. You've grown into a fine woman." My throat tightened. "Thank you, Dad." He nodded. "And Ethan, you've made quite an impression. I'm glad she found someone like you." Ethan smiled. "So am I." We walked out together, the night air cool and silent. As we reached the car, I let out a shaky breath. "That was strange," I murmured. Ethan chuckled. "It was progress, maybe small but real." I turned to him. "Do you think they'll ever truly see me differently?" He looked at me for a long moment before saying, "They already do, Arya, but whether they accept that change, that's up to them, not you." A week later, Harper called me out of the blue. "Hey," she said, her voice hesitant, "can we meet, just the two of us?" I was surprised but agreed. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place where no one cared about names or family status. When she walked in, she looked different, tired, maybe even humble. "I owe you an apology," she began, sitting across from me. "I've been awful to you for years." I studied her face. "Why now?" She sighed. "Because last night, Daniel told me something. He said the way I treated you made him see a side of me he didn't like. He said if I can't love my own sister, how could I ever truly love him?" Her voice cracked, and for the first time I saw genuine regret. "Arya, I was jealous. You always stayed kind, no matter how much they hurt you. You made me look small." I blinked back tears. "Harper, I never wanted to compete with you." "I know," she said softly. "That's why it hurts more. You're stronger than I ever was." We sat in silence for a while, then she reached across the table. Can we start over? I hesitated, then took her hand. We can try. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. Days passed. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. Ethan continued traveling for business, but he always made time for quiet dinners at home, long walks through the park, and late-night talks about our future. One night, as we watched the sunset from his balcony, he turned to me and said, "You've come a long way, Arya. I'm proud of you." I smiled. "You've given me courage, Ethan." He shook his head. "No, love, the courage was always yours. I just reminded you it was there." I looked out at the fading horizon, the same city that once felt too big, too cruel. Now it felt like home, because home wasn't where I came from anymore. It was where I was becoming who I was meant to be. And as the first stars appeared, I whispered to myself, sometimes life doesn't give you the family you deserve. It gives you the strength to create your own. Ethan wrapped his arm around me, pulling me close. "You ready for the next chapter?" I smiled, always. The helicopter lights in the distance blinked faintly, a reminder of the night everything changed. Not because of wealth or status, but because truth finally took flight. And this time, I wasn't afraid to soar. The morning air was crisp as Arya stepped onto the balcony of Ethan's penthouse, the city stretching endlessly beneath her. The lights of London were still faint against the soft dawn, and for the first time in years, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Ethan came up behind her, hands tucked casually into his pockets and wrapped an arm around her waist. "Morning," he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "You look peaceful." "I think I am," Arya replied, her eyes tracing the horizon. "I never thought this day would come, the day I'd feel whole again." She leaned into him, taking comfort in the familiar warmth of his presence. "All those years of doubt, of feeling unwanted, it's like they're finally behind me." Ethan kissed the top of her head gently. "You've carried so much, Arya, but now the past doesn't have to define you anymore. You're stronger than any of their judgments." Her mind drifted back to her parents' house, to the moment she finally faced Harper, her sister who had once mocked her relentlessly. Harper's eyes had been full of tears, of regret, and Arya had felt the same, but it was different now. She had learned that forgiveness wasn't about their relief, it was about her peace. "I wonder," she murmured, "how much longer it will take for them to truly understand me." Ethan smiled knowingly. "Let them take their time. You don't need their approval to be complete." Later that morning, Arya received a call from her mother. "Arya, can we see you today? Just the three of us," she said, her voice hesitant yet sincere. Arya felt a flutter in her chest. It wasn't fear, but curiosity. Curiosity about the family she had once called her own and whether they were ready to face the truth of her growth. When she arrived, the house seemed smaller than she remembered, the walls heavy with memory. Her father stood by the fireplace, the lines on his face deepened by years of regret. Harper lingered in the background, uncertain, waiting for her reaction. Arya took a deep breath, remembering that strength wasn't the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. Her mother spoke first, her eyes glistening. "Arya, we wanted to apologize for everything. The way we treated you was unfair." Arya studied her mother carefully. There was sincerity there, the kind that had been missing for years. She nodded slowly. "I know," she said softly, "and I forgive you, not because it's easy, but because I need peace." Her father's voice trembled as he continued. "And Harper, she has much to learn too, but she's trying. I hope you see that." Arya glanced at Harper, whose eyes reflected remorse she hadn't seen before. Harper stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. "I've been selfish, Arya. I judged you for being different when I should have stood by you. I want to make amends." Arya's chest tightened, a mixture of emotions swirling inside her. Forgiveness had never been so tangible, yet she understood that it wasn't about them. It was about reclaiming herself. "We can start over," she said finally, and the words felt like a release she hadn't realized she was holding onto. That afternoon, Arya returned to Ethan's apartment, the city buzzing below as if nothing had changed, yet everything had. She told Ethan about the conversation, about the tentative steps her family had taken toward reconciliation. He held her hands in his eyes steady and comforting. "See," he said softly. "You're teaching them how to love you by showing them who you really are." Days turned into weeks. Arya immersed herself in her foundation, dedicating her energy to supporting young women who had grown up feeling unwanted, unloved, or invisible. Every story she heard mirrored fragments of her own past, and she poured all her compassion, wisdom, and strength into helping them find their own voices. One evening, after a long day of meetings and school visits, Ethan and Arya sat on the rooftop terrace, watching the sun dip beneath the horizon. The city was bathed in hues of orange and purple, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. "Do you ever think about how different things would have been if you hadn't left home?" Ethan asked quietly. "I do," Arya admitted, "but leaving wasn't just about escaping them. It was about finding myself, about realizing that love and acceptance aren't given, they're chosen." She leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. "I've learned that true family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about those who stay, those who uplift, those who love unconditionally." Ethan kissed her forehead, smiling. "And you've created that family around yourself now, haven't you?" "I have," Arya said, voice strong yet tender. "And it's more powerful than anything I ever imagined." The weeks that followed brought small, meaningful victories. Harper continued to reach out, calling regularly, asking advice, even volunteering at Arya's foundation. Her parents attended a fundraising gala for the foundation, quietly supporting the work their daughter had built from the ground up. Each interaction was a step toward reconciliation, yet Arya knew that her peace didn't depend on their acceptance. It depended on her choice to embrace life fully. Then came the day that would mark the ultimate test of that peace. A young girl from the foundation, Lily, invited Arya to attend a community event honoring children who had overcome hardships. Arya, always humble, hesitated, but Ethan encouraged her. "You're not just changing lives, Arya. You're showing them that their struggles can be transformed into strength." At the event, Arya listened to each story, her heart swelling with empathy and hope. Every smile, every tear reminded her that her journey, filled with rejection, ridicule, and pain, had purpose. The girl who once felt invisible now stood as a beacon of resilience, and in that moment, Arya knew that forgiveness and love weren't signs of weakness, they were manifestations of courage. As the sun set, casting golden light over the gathering, Arya looked at Ethan, gratitude shining in her eyes. "We've come so far," she whispered. "We have," he said, holding her close. "And the journey isn't over, it's only beginning. You're ready for whatever comes next." Arya closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the moment, the triumph of living fully, the quiet satisfaction of turning pain into purpose. The city around them thrummed with life, and for the first time, she felt perfectly aligned with her destiny. And so, in the gentle glow of evening, surrounded by those who truly mattered and strengthened by the choices she had made, Arya finally understood the essence of life. That happiness isn't granted by others, but earned through courage, forgiveness, and unwavering self-belief. The following morning, Arya awoke to a quiet house. Ethan was already gone, probably at the foundation office, planning the next steps to expand their programs. She stretched lazily, sunlight spilling across the room, and for a moment allowed herself to breathe deeply, really breathe, without the weight of her past pressing on her chest. Today, she had decided, she would take a step she had postponed for far too long. Arya returned to her hometown, not as the scared, fragile girl who had left years ago, but as a woman strengthened by her journey. Every street seemed familiar, yet different, as if the town itself had shifted slightly in her absence. She parked outside the old community center, where memories of childhood and adolescence came flooding back. It was here she had first learned the sting of exclusion, the bitterness of judgment, and the loneliness of being the other. Now she was coming back not to confront her past with anger, but to reconcile with it, to give it meaning. Inside, she was greeted by familiar faces, neighbors, old friends, and even some teachers who had once doubted her. Their smiles, warm and welcoming, were a stark contrast to the icy stares she remembered as a child. She realized that time had changed them, and more importantly, it had changed her perspective. People weren't defined by their mistakes, they were defined by their capacity to grow. A small girl approached her cautiously, holding a tattered notebook. "Are you Arya?" she asked softly. "The Arya from the Foundation." Arya knelt down, meeting the girl's hopeful gaze. "Yes, I am, and you are." "I'm Emma," the girl whispered. I wanted to tell you, your story helped me not give up." Arya felt her chest tighten with emotion. She reached out, taking Emma's small hands in hers. "That's why I do this," she said, voice steady but warm. "Because every person who feels invisible deserves to know they matter." As they spoke, Arya's mind wandered to her family. Her sister, Harper, who was slowly learning humility. Her parents, who had begun to see her for the strong woman she had become. Forgiveness had opened doors she hadn't even realized were closed, and she understood, in a profound way, that growth often demanded patience, understanding, and courage. Later, she visited her parents' home again. This time, she wasn't there to seek validation or approval. She was there to share peace, to cement the fragile threads of reconciliation that had begun. Her mother greeted her with a cautious smile, her father with silent eyes brimming with unspoken emotion. Harper, too, stood by, an awkward mixture of pride and shame crossing her face. Arya spoke first, her voice calm yet commanding. "I'm not here to rehash old wounds. I'm here to move forward together if you're willing." Her mother's hands trembled as she reached out to take Arya's. "We are," she whispered. "We want to be better for you and for ourselves." Harper stepped closer, her voice breaking. "I can't undo what I said, what I did, but I want to learn how to be the sister you deserved." Arya nodded, letting the tension dissolve. "Learning is all any of us can do," she said softly. "The rest is choice. Choosing kindness, choosing love, choosing each other." That evening, as she drove back to Ethan's estate, Arya felt an unfamiliar lightness. Her family wasn't perfect, and the past would always linger in shadows, but she had reclaimed her narrative. She had stepped into the power of her own story. Weeks passed. Arya's foundation thrived, reaching more children and families than she could have imagined. She traveled to remote communities, meeting children who had never been told they mattered. And every time she spoke, every time she shared her journey, she noticed the subtle shifts, the flicker of hope in a child's eyes, the gentle lift of a parent's shoulders as they realized their own power to nurture love. One afternoon, as she walked through the halls of the foundation, she noticed a young boy sitting alone, head down, shoulders slumped. She approached him slowly. "Hi," she said softly. "My name is Arya, what's yours?" He looked up, eyes wary. "Leo," he muttered. Arya sat beside him, careful not to overwhelm. "Leo, I know it's hard sometimes, feeling unseen, feeling unheard, but I promise you, you are not invisible. You matter." Tears welled in his eyes, and he nodded, a fragile smile forming. In that moment, Arya saw the truth she had long understood. Human value isn't granted. It's recognized, nurtured, and celebrated. Every child, every person deserved that acknowledgement. Later that week, Ethan surprised her with an evening at the rooftop terrace, decorated with lanterns and soft music. He took her hands in his, looking deeply into her eyes. "You've changed so many lives," he said quietly. "But Arya, I want you to know, you've changed mine the most." Arya felt a warmth she hadn't allowed herself to feel fully in years. "You've been my anchor," she admitted, "and my partner in everything. Without you, I wouldn't have believed in this journey." Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let's continue it together. Not just for us, but for everyone who needs to see that love and forgiveness can create strength." The wind blew gently over them, carrying with it the scent of flowers and the distant city below. Arya closed her eyes, letting herself absorb the moment, knowing that life, with all its challenges and heartbreaks, was also filled with beauty, redemption, and boundless potential. As night fell, she reflected on how far she had come, from the girl laughed at by her family to the woman commanding her destiny, creating light where there had once been darkness. Every step had been difficult, every choice deliberate, but she understood now that the journey was the reward. And in that understanding, Arya finally found what she had long been seeking, the unshakable knowledge that her worth was never defined by others. It had always been within her, waiting to be recognized, nurtured, and shared with the world. Days turned into weeks, and Arya's life began to settle into a rhythm she had never experienced before. There was a sense of balance now, between work and personal life, between giving and receiving, between reflection and action. Her foundation expanded rapidly, helping more children than she had ever dreamed possible, and each success reinforced the truth she had been living. Healing was contagious, and kindness, intentional and persistent, could reshape the world. One morning, as she was reviewing proposals for a new community project, a letter arrived, postmarked from her hometown. She hesitated before opening it, sensing a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The envelope was handwritten in her mother's familiar script. Inside, the words made her pause. "Arya, we would like to invite you to a family gathering. We hope you will come. Love, Mother." Arya folded the letter carefully, a subtle smile forming on her lips. She knew that accepting this invitation wouldn't erase the past, nor would it magically erase the pain. But it was a step, a conscious choice to embrace reconciliation without sacrificing her peace. She called Ethan, explaining the situation. Ethan's voice was calm, supportive as always. "Do what feels right, Arya. This isn't about proving anything. It's about choosing the life you want to live." When she arrived at the family home, Arya noticed how different it felt to enter as a woman of strength rather than as the insecure, marginalized girl she once was. Harper opened the door, her expression a mixture of nervousness and hope. "Arya, thank you for coming," she said softly. Arya stepped inside and her parents followed, their eyes full of cautious anticipation. The room was warm, filled with subtle lighting and the faint aroma of home-cooked meals. For a moment, silence dominated, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was reflective, an acknowledgement of all that had happened, all that had been endured. Her mother spoke first, her voice trembling slightly. "Arya, we can't change the past, but we can try to be better. Can we start over?" Arya's heart softened. She remembered the countless nights of crying herself to sleep, the sting of exclusion, the weight of being unseen. And yet, she also remembered the years she had spent rebuilding herself, reclaiming her life, and learning to forgive, not for them, but for her own peace. "Yes," she said quietly, "we can start over. But we have to be honest with each other and with ourselves." The evening unfolded gently. Conversations, once awkward and guarded, began to flow. Harper shared stories of her own mistakes and lessons, her voice tinged with humility. Her parents reflected on their own failings, speaking with vulnerability that Arya hadn't expected. And through it all, Arya listened, not as a passive participant, but as an empowered woman who had finally reclaimed her narrative. Later, after the gathering, Arya walked into the garden, the night sky above glittering with stars. Ethan followed, taking her hand in his. "You faced everything with courage," he said softly. "Even when it hurt the most, you chose love over anger, peace over resentment." Arya leaned against him, the cool night air brushing her face. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean choosing a path that lets you live fully without bitterness dragging you down." They stood there for a long time, the quiet hum of the night surrounding them. In that silence, Arya reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the whispered cruelty of her sister, the cold distance of her parents, to the unwavering support of Ethan and the fulfillment she had found in helping others. Every step, every heartbreak, had led to this moment of clarity. In the weeks that followed, Arya's foundation continued to thrive, drawing attention from both local and international communities. Her work inspired countless others, showing that adversity could be transformed into purpose, and that the measure of a person wasn't in how they were treated, but in how they chose to respond. One afternoon, as she visited a community center in a remote town, a young girl approached her with wide, anxious eyes. "Miss Arya," she said softly, "do you think people like me can ever belong?" Arya knelt to meet her gaze, gently lifting her chin. "You already belong," she said firmly. "Your story matters, your life matters, and every choice you make to embrace love and kindness proves it even more." The girl smiled, a mixture of relief and hope lighting her face. In that instant, Arya felt the full weight of her journey, not as a burden, but as a legacy. Each life she touched, Each child she helped reinforced the truth she had carried all these years. Human value is innate, and love, when chosen intentionally, can heal even the deepest wounds. That evening, back at Ethan's home, they hosted a small gathering of friends, mentors, and beneficiaries of the foundation. The air was filled with laughter, gratitude, and the quiet hum of possibility. Arya watched Ethan interact with the children, his eyes warm with admiration, and she realized that the life she had built wasn't just about success. It was about creating a world where everyone had the chance to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. As night deepened, Arya reflected on the journey of her life, the moments of rejection, the sting of betrayal, the heartache of feeling unseen, and how they had shaped her into the woman she had become. Each memory, once painful, had been transformed into wisdom. Each setback had been an opportunity to rise, stronger and more compassionate. And in the stillness of that night, under the stars that had witnessed her transformation, Arya finally understood a profound truth. Happiness, fulfillment, and peace weren't granted by others. They were cultivated within. By choosing forgiveness, by embracing her worth, and by spreading love, she had not only healed herself but had illuminated the path for countless others to do the same. The following morning, Arya woke to the soft golden light spilling through the bedroom windows. She stretched, feeling a deep sense of calm settle over her, an unfamiliar yet welcomed peace. Ethan was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast, his movements steady and thoughtful. He looked up as she entered, smiling. "Morning," he said softly, ready for another day of changing the world. Arya returned the smile, feeling the warmth of his presence. "More than ever," she replied. There was no hesitation in her voice, no doubt, only clarity. Each day now carried purpose, and with Ethan by her side, she felt unstoppable. Later that morning, Arya received a message from Harper. It was short but heartfelt. "Mom and I want to volunteer at the foundation today. We want to help, really help. Thank you for showing us the way." Arya's heart swelled. She realized that change wasn't instantaneous. But it was possible when people witnessed courage and compassion firsthand. When they arrived at the foundation, Harper and her mother immersed themselves in the work, helping children, organizing activities, and sharing moments of encouragement. Arya watched them, pride and relief mingling in her chest. This was the tangible proof of growth, not perfection, but intention. The family, once fractured by misunderstanding and prejudice, was learning to redefine itself through love and action. Later that afternoon, Arya was called to a local community hall. A ceremony was being organized to honor young people who had overcome significant challenges. She stood on the stage, her gaze sweeping across the audience of parents, children, and volunteers. Each face reflected hope, resilience, and gratitude. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice carrying both strength and tenderness. "You are all remarkable," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. "Life has a way of testing us, of pushing us to our limits. But the truth is this: your worth is not determined by the challenges you face, but by the courage with which you meet them. Every act of kindness, every decision to stand tall, every choice to forgive, these are the moments that define you." Applause filled the hall, but Arya felt her gaze drawn to a young girl sitting in the front row, her eyes wide with awe. Arya knelt to meet her gaze. "You have the power to transform your life," she whispered. "Believe in yourself always." The girl nodded, tears glistening, and in that instant, Arya understood the ripple effect of compassion. As the ceremony ended, Arya stepped outside. The sky was painted with shades of amber and violet, the setting sun reflecting her own journey from darkness to light, from doubt to certainty. Ethan joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he said softly. "You've changed lives, not just your own." Arya rested her head against him, her heart full. "And I've realized something," she whispered. "The most important change isn't in others, it's in ourselves. Forgiveness, courage, and love, they start within, and when we embody them, they spread." Weeks later, Arya received an unexpected invitation. It was from her hometown's mayor, asking her to speak at a youth empowerment summit. She accepted, eager to continue sharing her story, eager to remind the world that every individual has intrinsic value and every life matters. On the day of the summit, as she took the stage, Arya felt the familiar rush of nerves, the echo of her past insecurities. But she also felt strength, cultivated over years of struggle, resilience, and triumph. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm here today to tell you that no one gets to define your worth. No mistake, no rejection, no cruelty can take it away. It is yours, and only you can nurture it." The audience listened intently, absorbing every word. Arya shared stories of children she had met, families she had reconciled with, and the journey that had led her to discover the transformative power of self-worth and compassion. Each anecdote was a testament to the idea that human value is inherent, undeniable, and powerful when recognized and acted upon. As she concluded, the hall erupted in applause. She looked out at the crowd, tears, smiles, hope, and knew that her journey had come full circle. The pain of rejection, the sting of ridicule, and the weight of invisibility had all led her to this purpose-driven life. Every hardship had been a lesson, every heartbreak a catalyst, every act of courage a foundation. Returning home that evening, Arya and Ethan walked hand in hand through the city streets. The world around them was alive with possibilities, each light and shadow reflecting the stories of those they had touched. Arya felt a deep, unshakable sense of fulfillment. She had not only reclaimed her life but had created a legacy, one of love, forgiveness, courage, and the unwavering belief in human value. That night, as she lay in bed beside Ethan, Arya reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. From the girl excluded at family gatherings to the woman honored by communities far and wide, she had transformed her pain into purpose, her rejection into resilience, and her journey into hope. She closed her eyes, letting the weight of gratitude and achievement settle into her heart. And in that quiet, sacred space, Arya understood the ultimate truth. Life's worth is measured not by the hardships we endure but by the love we give, the forgiveness we extend, and the courage with which we choose to live fully. Her story, once defined by pain, had become a testament to the power of resilience, compassion, and unwavering self-belief. With the city lights twinkling below and the night sky above, Arya finally knew peace. She had faced her past, embraced her present, and paved the way for a future illuminated by hope, love, and infinite possibilities. The journey was complete, not because life was perfect, but because she had discovered the strength to define her own destiny, and in doing so, she had inspired countless others to do the same.